Hello, and welcome to Of the People. Peace for our time. Those were the infamous words spoken by then British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain in 1938. As a matter of fact, it was September 30th, 1938, almost 66 years ago today, when he returned from Munich, Germany, having signed the non-aggression pact with Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany. He gives the speech, I think at 10 Downing Street, as I recall. They go to bed. What happens? Hitler goes in and takes the Sudetenland. A year later, he takes the rest of Czechoslovakia and Poland, and we are officially in World War II. Ladies and gentlemen, appeasement as a foreign policy didn't work then, and appeasement as a foreign policy doesn't work now. For those who have not caught up on the news, a few hours ago, Iran launched a ballistic missile attack against Israel, sending hundreds of ballistic missiles into Israel. And by the way, it's not a few dozen missiles, as CNN blatantly misreported out of the gate, because, of course, this is about the Jewish state, so why not underreport the facts? This is an all-out attack on a sovereign nation by way of Iran, which is really the head of the serpent. To put this in perspective, this is the largest ballistic missile attack on a foreign nation in the history of the world, right? The fact that there weren't so many casualties does not lessen the severity of the attack, and it really lays bare the perpetual lie by the U.S. media that Israel and the Middle East are, quote, on the brink of war. Israel is not on the brink of war. Israel has been at war since they were attacked on October 7th by Hamas out of Gaza, killing over 1,300 Israelis and Americans, taking hundreds of hostages. We think 100 are still alive, but my guess is most of them are probably not, and committing unspeakable atrocities in the process. So this is really simple. Iran's appalling attack is not the first, it's the second missile attack since October 7th. And it proves that Israel and America are already at war. And like I said, the fact that there weren't casualties is more or as many casualties, there are some, that is a testament to Israel's technology, not to anything else, but doesn't lessen the severity of the strike, nor the need, to be honest, for Israel to respond decisively and directly against such aggression. Today's events prove two things. Number one, that Israel must be allowed to defend itself and its territory and its people, regardless of whether the U.S. supports that response or not. They will certainly give lip service to this report, the Biden administration, right, and their policies of appeasement towards Iran helped create this situation. I find it very interesting that Secretary of State Blinken today released an op-ed touting that the Biden-Harris administration foreign policy has put the U.S. on strategically such a better footing in the world. I don't think he knew that was going to happen, that the attacks were going to happen, but for that to come out at the same day is interesting. The second thing that's crystal clear in all of this is that peace will only come for Israel and its neighbors when Iran and its proxies and the mullahs in Iran, the leadership in Iran, are relegated to the dustbin of history. Peace for our time or appeasement didn't work in 1938. Peace will only be achieved, in the words of Ronald Reagan, peace through strength. Appeasement didn't work then, and clearly, based on the events of today, it doesn't work now. And that's the monologue. Ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled to have joining us today the Honorable Bonnie Glick. She is the former head of USAID. She is the co-author of three patents. She's worked at IBM. She served in the National Security Council of the United Nations. Foreign Services. She is also a PASC, which most people don't know is Presidential Appointee, Senate confirmed. That's a big deal and a big process. And most importantly, Bonnie was the first person to step up when I started talking to people about Israel Appreciation Day, and her response was, whatever it takes, I'm in. We need to all do this together. And for that, and she's become a very good friend in a very short amount of time. And I'm honored to introduce to you Bonnie Glick, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the people.
Thank you so much, Robert and Ericka. Very, very kind intro. You asked me to do it. It was coming from you. So, of course, I said yes.
Well, we are in the process of putting together an edited version for those who missed the event. It's an incredible event. It was actually 3.5 hours. You got to leave early because you were on the B stage. But those of us in Vegas had to stay there for a long time. But it was a great show, and thank you again for being such a part of it. I do want to jump just to sort of the events of today in Israel and get your perspective on it and what you think might be Israel's response, what you think might be the U.S. response under the Biden-Harris administration. I mean, obviously, if you listen to the monologue, you certainly know my position on it. And look, I don't want this to be political. I want this to be sort of unvarnished. So what does Israel do? What are their options? What will the allies do if Israel has any? Let's start there.
Well, it is a very somber day, but the Jewish approach to life is it could have been worse, right? There was one person who was killed, and that was a Palestinian in Judea. And it's a little bit of karma there. And my understanding is there were 190 ballistic missiles thereabouts launched at Israel from Iranian territory. Of those 190 missiles, Israel was able to attack mostly successfully and knock down 90% of those missiles. The United States, the U.S. Navy was able to knock down about 10% of those missiles. We do still have an ally in America, I will say, in Israel. But we don't always have an ally in the Biden-Harris administration, nor in the halls of Congress. One of the things that I saw come out very, very clearly during the course of events today was the outpouring of support, incredible outpouring of support from members of Congress and senators, nearly all of whom were Republican. Again, this isn't a partisan statement. It's simply a statement of fact that the Republicans have really rallied. Former President Trump had a statement on this, but also allies around the world have come out and said, we stand with Israel. Not a lot, maybe, but the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, the former head of what we would call Homeland Security in the United Kingdom, Suella Braverman, the former Prime Minister of the UK, Liz Truss, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, people have been coming out and saying that they stand with Israel. But here's the main thing. Commentators, pundits, entrepreneurs who have a great deal of interest in ensuring that Israel, the startup nation, continue to thrive. People have been coming out and saying every and any action that Israel takes against Iran is fully justified. And I think that that's accurate. You noted, Robert, that this was the largest number of missiles launched at the sovereign territory of a country in the history of the world. But in April, Iran launched the second most. Up until that time, it was the most missiles launched in a single foray at a sovereign nation. So Iran is asking for it, right? When you think about this act of war, this egregious and wanton aggression directed against Israel, who happens to be a treaty ally of the United States, It is an unacceptable level of attack. Not that any attack is ever acceptable, but it warrants a response, and Israel would be justified in responding in any way that it chooses.
So I just am curious, right? We hear a lot of times about what it means to be an ally of the United States, and we, especially in relation to NATO. I know I love the face you just made. So if so help me understand, help our audience understand. If one of our allies is aggressed on, we are like obligated to defend them, right? Like in some kind of a way. And so, but then, and I'm just curious, like because everybody's talking about World War III. So if Iran attacks one of our allies and we're like, yo, bro, no, and then we shoot them back, and then what have we started? Then who's going to attack us on behalf of Iran? Because we can wipe them off the map. So Iran cannot be thinking like, oh, I'm going to be good against Israel and America. Like, what are we missing that's not?
So wait a minute. Are you asking Bonnie to get into the head of the Iranians? What their psychology is?
I mean, I guess, because Iran, look, they cannot be doing this thinking that they can get away with it. So there has to be something behind it. Either they're like, oh, if they do this, the Chinese are going to back us up. And then it's going to be a whole, what's the end game? I know it's to kill the Jews, but there's got to be more behind this.
Well, the end game is to eradicate Israel. That is Iran's mission. The mullahs who are driving everything out of Iran. But there is a little bit of a distinction. Actually, it's a very big distinction between being a treaty ally of the United States, like Israel is, and Israel is also falls into the category of major non-NATO ally, which is really like a step up above regular treaty ally, but it is not a member of NATO. And the distinction there, Ericka, is that we are not obligated in the way we are with NATO to respond on Israel's behalf. It's just it's the good thing to do. It's what your allies do when you're down. Your allies step in when they can and they're helpful. What Iran may be looking to do, though, is going to that NATO response. If Iran were to launch an attack on us in the United States, NATO would be obligated, every NATO member country would be obligated to respond against Iran. The only time, and this is called Article 5 of the NATO treaty, very technical, but the only time Article 5 has ever been invoked in the history, 75 plus year history of NATO, was after 9/11, when it was an attack on one is an attack on all, and our NATO allies rallied to our side.
Interesting.
So that's interesting. So I have two questions there. The first is whether or not it's really been tested, because 9/11 was such a black swan event.
Right.
And therefore, question one is, what qualifies as an attack on a NATO member? I mean, what's the threshold, right? Because, I mean, is an attack one missile, or is it 5, right? Is an attack 100 missiles? So that's the first question. And the second question, Bonnie, really comes down to more of what options realistically does Iran have? Israel's going to respond. Right. And they're going to respond decisively. I don't think there's any question about that, right? And it goes to Ericka's question about endgame, but that's a much broader conversation. So my question is, Israel responds, whether they go after the nuclear reactors, because there's now the whole issue of how long is it going to take for Iran to develop a nuclear warhead, because obviously based on the materials they have, they can do it, at least as far as been reported, fairly quickly. And do they have a delivery vehicle, right, for that? So Israel responds. The first question is, what qualifies as an attack on NATO? The second question is, once Israel responds decisively, whatever that is, what's Iran's real options here without really escalating this? Because they don't want to escalate.
I'm not sure. So in answer quickly to your first question, what constitutes an attack? Russia has been launching attacks at Ukraine, and occasionally those missiles land in Poland. Technically, Poland could request that Article 5 be invoked anytime a missile lands on Polish territory. It's up to the offended party, Poland in that case, to request that NATO's Article 5 be exercised.
Okay, so that's why the U.S. somebody got hit today in retaliation or some. I'm trying to remember. I think like a U.S. ship got hit or something, and when the general was asked about it in the press conference, he was like, "Well, it was like a mistake technically, and so that's why we're not hitting them back." Or no, he said it was because nobody got injured. Oh, that was what he was like. Oh, we're not bombing them back because no one got injured. I was like, okay.
Yeah, there are words to describe that. They're not good. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So then to the next question.
What are Iran's options?
Yeah. So then.
Okay. So that sounded like so it is the nonsense that it sounds like then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Iran-backed Houthi rebels have been launching missiles and rockets at the shipping lanes of the Red Sea for months now, and they've been hitting American cargo ships, British cargo ships, Greek cargo ships, and NATO has not responded.
And we do nothing.
Wow.
And we do nothing.
Why?
We've done teensy bits here and there to just like let them know that we're there. But it's our response has been negligible, which is why they've ignored it. And why they've persisted in these attacks on shipping. And that has effectively cost the global economy by now close up on $1 trillion in delayed shipments of goods. But because this is a major transshipment point from Europe to Asia, and into Africa, comparable to the Suez Canal. If not larger. And they have effectively shut down those shipping lanes. So it's totally nuts. And the Biden administration has been very reluctant to respond because they don't like the term escalation. They would rather have some very harsh words like don't.
So they're cowards. That's what I hear you saying, Bonnie.
Cowardly. But I think for Israel, at this point in time, the gloves are off.
Yeah.
And Prime Minister Netanyahu has been warning for years about the threat of Iranian nuclear capabilities for years. His previous to this one, his joint session before Congress was about the Iranian nuclear missile threat, which then led President Obama to sign on to the Iran nuclear deal
because he had a bunch of money.
Netanyahu. And to everyone's great surprise, not at all, Donald Trump said he would pull out of the deal. He did, and Biden immediately re-entered it. Iran has been manufacturing and preparing for a nuclear strike on Israel for years. And now, according to intelligence, I understand that Iran is a week away from having nuclear missile capability, 2 weeks maybe. The good news is today, by launching 190 ballistic missiles, maybe one of those they had planned to add a nuclear warhead onto and didn't have a chance yet. So it's one less missile they have available that might be nuclear capable.
Well, and the Biden administration, so the Obama administration unfroze hundreds of millions of dollars, and then the Biden administration gave them
billions,
and then
billions.
Oh, billions! Obama was billions also, because Biden gave them 16.
Well, and Biden straight up wrote a check for $6 billion for them to release 5 hostages that they had taken, American citizens. And this was before October 7th. This was early on in Team Biden's tenure. And they wrote a check for $6 billion. They released Russian prisoners from American jails for the release of Brittany Griner. They capitulated to kidnappers and paid prices. And everybody cautioned and said everybody with a brain and said, this is a terrible precedent to be setting. You don't negotiate with terrorists. You don't cave to hostage takers' demands. And it led to this crazy, in part, it led to October 7th with the kidnapping of 256 Israelis and foreign nationals who have now been held in Gaza for almost a year.
Right. Bonnie, to me, I try to simplify things. The oversimplification is schoolyard. International relations is schoolyard politics, right? If you don't confront the bully becomes more aggressive, right? And it's almost Pavlovian that if you don't punish someone who does something bad, they're going to be incentivized to do it again. And I realize that's a gross oversimplification, and geopolitics and real politics sort of dictates things slightly differently. Let's shift really quickly, though, to the technology. So 190 missiles, I had heard a higher number, but let's just assume it's 200 missiles.
Yeah.
Right. Let's assume it's 200 missiles. Almost none of them landed. And you were right, by the way, and ladies and gentlemen, what we didn't bring up in the chat is lost in all of this was there was a terrorist attack in Tel Aviv that did kill 7 or 8 or 9 people today at the same time. So we don't want to lose sight of that as well. But I want to get back to the technology that Israel has that they're using to intercept the missiles. It's the Iron Dome, but it's something else as well, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, Israel has, think about a dome, a protective dome to cover the entirety of the land of Israel. So this protective dome is called Iron Dome. They also have an ability that they call David's sling.
Slingshot or sling, right?
Yeah, to intercept missiles outside of Israeli territory that are launched toward Israel. The capabilities of the Israeli Defense Forces are truly extraordinary. This is what Ronald Reagan referred to as SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative, which was called Star Wars. When he was president, the ability to shoot missiles out of the sky with a missile. With incredible precision.
Okay, so hold on. Okay, so I just have to say, what I just heard you say is that Israel has space lasers. So I'm just saying, Homegirl was given a lot of crap for saying that the Jews had space lasers, and what I just heard you say was they have space lasers.
Space lasers. Control the
just
weather
saying.
Too.
All right. Yeah. So we'll, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, hang on. We are going to hear from our sponsor, ASIC, Defenders of American Freedom. When we come back, we will be here with Bonnie Glick talking more about the insane happenings around the world. So make sure that you like this video, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you've got a question for Bonnie, leave it in the comment section. Make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell, and we'll see you back here in just a minute.